the lifeblood of any ministry is obviously having people. And you can have all the people in the world, but if you don't have the finances, you can't purchase gospel literature. You can't purchase buildings. You can't, it takes money to finance a vision. So whether you're in business or whether you're in the ministry, you need to have finances to be able to do that. And God has laid out very clearly his method to finance the gospel, and that's through the people. And in the process of the people doing that, that will be given back to them, the Bible promises to them. Unfortunately, there's a lot of distortion in the body of Christ concerning finances. It's a very controversial subject because there's a lot of flaky gospels out there round about finances. And I'd like to consider myself to be somewhat reasonably balanced in that area because I've seen a lot, I've heard a lot over the years. I've seen people remortgaging their houses to put into a ministry, which is just crazy, but yet people will do this because of the manipulation that can come from certain people. I don't prescribe to the gospel magic message where, you put so much money into my ministry, quote unquote, and you'll have 100-fold return coming through your letterbox the next morning. That's what I call gospel magic. That doesn't exist because the Bible clearly says that your labour is what's going to produce in your life, not magic. And God does not bless laziness. He doesn't bless people who are slothful. God blesses people who are diligent with their hands, diligent in business. And over the years, I've been to a number of financial seminars and heard a number of ministers. I've met a lot of them personally, and I don't necessarily agree with all that they say, but there's always something there you can glean from and learn from them through the conversation. But there's just so much misinformation out there in the church concerning finances. People have been put off by it. But the reality is that a church cannot function without finances, just the same way a business cannot function without finances. So the way that God has ordained that to be done is through the congregation. But we are a wee bit different in terms of how we've done business, because what we did was we purchased a building which was too big for us, knowingly that we could rent out the top floor of the building to generate income to the church. So that helped to pay the church off very quickly because we had tenants upstairs that we let the building out to, and they paid a rent to us. So that was something that helped. We also owned other property which we could rent out as well. So we were involved in the business side as well as ministry concerning how we did our finances. And that was just something supernatural that God did in our lives, that God opened up doors and made it possible for us to have good tenants to come in to look after our commercial property. So that helped us immensely.
Okay, thank you so much, Pastor. Let me take one more before you. I know you're bubbling with some questions. Pastor, at the beginning you mentioned that God doesn't reward slothfulness, rewards hard work and so on. I see a lot of Christians still struggling financially. Is it that they do not have the financial education that they require to break through financially? Or is it that they're not working hard enough, or that God is not blessing their efforts?
Well, I've used my father as an example. My father wasn't a believer, but he worked for the same company all his life. He put 50 years into a company, and at the end of it, he wasn't any further forward financially. He had a small pension to come back on. And after putting all that time and effort and hard work, he would work 80 hours a week. Wow. In that company. He would be there 6 o'clock in the mornings, 8 o'clock at night. He was a production planner for quite a big company. But the reality was he never got ahead in life, but yet he worked his fingers off. But he never got ahead. So it's not hard work that determines whether or not there's going to be any financial reward in your life. It's working a wee bit smarter as opposed to harder. And financial education does play a big part in that, because one of the biggest lacks in the church is proper financial education. There isn't really so much a financial problem within the world as a whole. It's financial knowledge, it's the problem, where people understand how to budget effectively, how to invest money wisely, and how to get the best return. Again, one of the big problems that people have is immediate gratification. I want it now. I'm not willing to wait. I'm not willing to save up to pay cash for something. So they get deeper and deeper into debt, and all they're doing is creating a bigger hole for themselves. Because all debt really is doing is stripping the future to enhance the present. Yeah. So things might look good and rosy right now, but further down the road it's going to come back and bite you, because you're eating into your future with credit and credit cards and stuff like that. So yeah, financial education is very much needed in the body of Christ.
Pastor, if I may come in there, I know Oscar signaled that I may have some question to raise from what you said. Financial education. I think we may need to throw more light on what financial education implies, because I know for some of us that are watching here, their belief of what financial education is when somebody comes and tell them, what, that money you have, like you mentioned, people sell their property to finance this church. Maybe somebody they revere, comes to tell them, what, if you sell up what you have, or if you
Sow
have
the
the little
seeds.
you have, and you sow a seed in this ministry, that God is going to bless you. To some people, that is their understanding of financial education. Do you want to throw more light on what financial education is?
Yeah, that's the wrong financial education. Getting that advice. That's not how God operates. It's being a good steward with the finances you have. Everybody has 40 hours a week to work. Yeah.
Okay.
And at the end of the week, you get your wages or you get your salary at the end of the month. It's how you use that money that's very important. And people tend to overload themselves with commitments, financial commitments. They don't understand budgeting. They don't know how to do a proper budget. And then they'll complain to God because they don't have enough finances. But the reality is God has given them money, and it's how they use that money that determines how it works out. I have observed over the last couple of decades, maybe even going back 30, 40 years, when Asians came to this country, they didn't have an awful lot. People that came from Pakistan, they came from India, they didn't have an awful lot. But what they did have, they would have a house and they would all live in that house together to keep their overheads down. They were very careful in how they used their money, and they always had a vision to have a corner shop. That was a vision to have a corner groceries. And what they would do is they would work on the buses and work all the hours they could get with a view and a goal to get a corner shop. And then the vision was they would all work together as a community to try and get a cash and carry. And many of them did that very successfully. If you go to the south side of Glasgow, you see a lot of cash and carries are all owned by Asians.
Yeah,
Well, their grandparents were ones that came to this country, maybe their great-grandparents, and they basically started off with nothing, but they brought everything together to make life a bit easier. They would buy in bulk to keep their costs down. So I digress a wee bit there to use them as an example. It's a perfect example of what happened in Scotland going back 30, 40 years when the Asian community came over to this country. So in terms of in the church, which I've done many, many times, is sat down with people, myself and my wife, who sit down and say, right, okay, well, what's your budget? What does your budget look like? And it's all off the top of their head. There's nothing in writing. They don't really understand. You have to write it down and live by it. How do you delegate your finances? How do you divvy your money up? How much do you allocate for savings, etc.? And people will say, well, I just can't make ends meet, because of one reason or another. And you look at it and you say, well, wait a minute, you've got this huge big car payment, which is far beyond your means. You've got a Sky package there, maybe it's £100 a month. Why don't you cut that out? And it's only temporarily, perhaps, maybe for a few months until you get some more money behind you and clear any debt that you may have. And you can work on a cash basis. Myself and my wife, many years ago, we came to the point where we were up to our eyeballs in debt. We realised we just had to work on a cash basis to start off with. So we would just pay cash for everything. If we couldn't pay for something with cash, we wouldn't buy it. So financial education is a lot of common sense as well. If you don't have it, you don't buy it. If you have to pay for it on credit card or taking out loans, you can't really afford. It's not a good investment.
I think one high point or highlight I'm picking there is if you don't have it, don't buy it. That's whatever you cannot afford. Don't go and finance it with credit cards.
In terms of, I know you want to say something, but I want to pick on this. If you don't have it, don't buy it, or if don't spend what you have, and here we are looking at budgeting. It may sound as if I'm coming directly to you, the pastor, because here we are discussing faith and finance. And in terms of budgeting, you would budget with what you have. And today it's quite common. It may not be common in your church or in this part of the world, or it may still be. But, in other clime, and, majority of our viewers would agree that there is this teaching of the church that whatever you earn, if you work 40 hours a week, for example, or you work 80 hours a week, that whatever you earn, before you even budget to spend, you have to bring out 10%. and give it to God. So, what is the position, your position on this aspect?
Yeah, the tithing, again, it's one of these subjects in the church where there's a lot of false teaching concerning it. I believe when you ask most people where did tithing start, most people will tell you, well, it started in the law or it started with Abraham. The reality is that tithing started in the Garden of Eden, when God says you can eat of all the fruit in the garden with the exception of that one tree. So in other words, all this is yours to have with the exception of that one. That was really God laying down a guide, sowing a seed, shall we say, for the tithe to be introduced into humanity, because God owns everything. The Bible is very clear. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns the gold and the silver that's in the hills as well. So everything that a man gets in life is really coming from God, because God is the one that gives him the breath to do that. The Bible teaches that to be honour the Lord with the first fruits of our increase, our tithe. We honour him with our substance, which is our wealth. So I believe that tithing is very relevant for today, and it's important for today. There is a number of people in churches that don't believe in tithing. And I always say, well, if you don't believe in tithing, how then does the gospel get financed if you don't believe in tithing? I've never met somebody that came to me and says, you know, Pastor, I don't believe in tithing, but you know what? I'm going to be putting 15% of my income into the offering basket every week. You see, tithing is a heart issue. It's an issue of the heart. You know, where your heart is where your money is, and where your money is where your heart is. That's what Jesus taught us. So if I go to somebody that's a real golf enthusiast and open up the boot of his car, the chances are very high that I'm going to find golf clubs in the boot of his car, because he loves golf. Mm-hmm. His magazines are all going to be about golf. Everything he buys is all about golf, because that's where his heart is. And because his heart's there, that's where his money's going to be as well. So God is saying that he wants his heart. He wants the heart of a man. And the best way to get a heart of a man is through his finances. And there is certain things that hold people back from financing. You know, there's greed that will hold people back from finances. This is mine, I've earned it, it's my money. There's people that are in fear that, you know, if I give this money, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? There's unbelief. People just don't believe the scriptures, so they won't give. But the Bible is very clear. It says, trust me, prove me, and concerning the tithe, and see if I will not open to you the windows of heaven, pour out a blessing upon you. So we walk by faith and not by sight. So we as a church, we tithe, we over and above our tithe. We've always given more than a tithe as a church, and God has blessed us richly because of that. And where we are as a church today, and the assets and what we own as a church, could never have been done without tithers. I could never be in the full-time ministry for 25 years without tithers financing and supporting the ministry. So that's the question I always ask people. If we don't tithe, then how do we finance the gospel? How do we do it?
So in terms of tithing, the essence of it is to finance the gospel, from my understanding here. But to some gullible practicing Christians, I want to use that word, gullible, because you know, even when people are passing through financial difficulties, the global economic situation at the moment, things are not really where they are supposed to be, and somebody is not asking them to put in their money in the ministry willingly, but they are being compelled to put in their tithe resources into the ministry, to the point that some of them are being told, if you don't tithe, you won't go to heaven.
Well, this again is error. This is wrong teaching. We live by faith. It's a trust in God. Certain people just don't have the revelation of tithing. And my responsibility as a pastor is to impart the word and let the word work in a person's life. I never have and I never will compel people to be tithers. That's not my position to do that. That's something between a man and God. All I'm going to do is I'm going to do a teaching, and I have done this for 25 years. When I take an offering from the church, either myself or somebody else in the preaching team will do a stewardship meditation. We'll give a thought, maybe 3 minutes on tithing, the benefits of being a tither, the rewards of being a tither, whatever. We do some kind of teaching to inspire faith in people's lives, that they would get the revelation that comes from the Holy Spirit to the fact that tithing is right and it's the way to do it.